Welcome to Thought Gerd. Camping for many, it's the ultimate escape. A chance to disconnect from the relentless hum of modern life. To breathe in the crisp, clean air, and to reconnect with nature. The crackle of a campfire, the vast expanse of a star-filled sky, the quiet solitude of the wilderness. It all paints a picture of serene tranquility. But beneath that idyllic facade lies a primal vulnerability. When you venture into the wild, you're stepping into a world where the rules are different, where the familiar comforts of civilization are stripped away, and where the line between the known and the unknown blurs. These aren't just tales of bears or bad weather. These are accounts from individuals who, while seeking solace in nature, found themselves trapped in a nightmare that was all too real. They are real, and they happened because they just wanted to get away. Story 1. The Whispers in the Woods. This first chilling account comes from a young couple, Sarah and Mark, who embarked on what they hoped would be a romantic and peaceful camping trip in the remote wilderness of the Pacific Northwest during the summer of 2017. They were experienced campers, well-versed in backcountry survival, and had chosen a secluded spot deep within a national forest, far from any established campgrounds or hiking trails. They sought true solitude, a place where the only sounds would be the rustling of leaves and the distant calls of wildlife. Their first day was everything they had hoped for. They set up their tent by a clear, babbling creek, hiked through ancient, towering trees, and cooked a simple meal over an open fire. As dusk settled, the forest came alive with the sounds of the night, crickets chirping, owls hooting, and the gentle murmur of the creek. They felt a profound sense of peace, a connection to the untamed beauty around them. But as the night deepened, a new sound began to emerge, faint at first, then growing steadily more distinct. Whispers. It started subtly, a barely perceptible murmur carried on the wind, like distant voices engaged in a hushed conversation. Sarah and Mark initially dismissed it as the wind playing tricks, or perhaps the sound of the creek echoing through the trees. But the whispers grew more insistent, more defined, though still unintelligible. It sounded like multiple voices, speaking in a language they didn't recognize, a low, guttural cadence that seemed to weave in and out of the natural sounds of the forest. They shone their flashlights into the darkness, but saw nothing beyond the impenetrable wall of trees. They tried to ignore it, huddling closer by the dying embers of their campfire, but the whispers seemed to surround them, coming from all directions. They felt an unsettling presence, a sense of being watched from the shadows. Mark, usually unflappable, admitted he was unnerved. Sarah, who had always found comfort in the wilderness, now felt a creeping dread. They decided to retreat into their tent, zipping themselves inside, hoping the canvas would provide some barrier against the unseen. But the whispers followed them. Inside the tent, the sounds were even clearer, as if the voices were just outside the thin fabric, circling their makeshift shelter. They could hear distinct patterns, almost like words, but still no recognizable language. It was a maddening, disorienting sound, designed to chip away at their sanity. They held each other tightly, listening to the relentless, unseen conversation that seemed to have no end. The air inside the tent grew heavy, thick with an oppressive energy, and a cold, damp chill permeated their sleeping bags, despite the warmth of their bodies. As the hours dragged on, the whispers began to change. They became more aggressive, more guttural, punctuated by what sounded like faint growls and snarls. And then a new sound joined the chorus, a slow, deliberate dragging, like something heavy being pulled across the forest floor, circling their tent. It was a sound that defied explanation, a sound that suggested something large, something predatory, was moving just beyond their sight. They could feel the vibrations through the ground, a low thrumming that resonated deep within their chests. The climax of their ordeal occurred just before dawn. The dragging sound stopped directly outside their tent. The whispers ceased, replaced by an unnerving silence. Sarah and Mark held their breath, their hearts pounding in unison. Then a single guttural growl erupted from just inches away, a sound so primal and terrifying that it seemed to shake the very ground beneath them. It was followed by a loud, wet sniffing sound, as if something was pressing its nose against the tent fabric, right where their heads lay. They froze, paralyzed by fear. They could feel the warmth of its breath, the faint vibration of its nostrils against the tent. And then, a low, raspy voice, speaking in perfect, unaccented English, whispered directly into the tent, right next to Sarah's ear. "We know you're in there." Sarah screamed, a raw, primal sound of terror. Mark, fueled by a surge of adrenaline, grabbed his hunting knife and slashed through the tent fabric, bursting out into the pre-dawn gloom. There was nothing there, just the silent, ancient trees and the faint, lingering scent of damp earth and something vaguely animalistic. They didn't wait. They packed their gear in a frantic blur, abandoning anything they couldn't quickly grab, and ran. They ran through the forest, not stopping until they reached their car, miles away. They drove straight out of the national forest, not looking back, not daring to speak. Sarah and Mark never camped in the wilderness again. They still have nightmares about the whispers, about the dragging sound, and about that chilling voice. They never found out who or what was in those woods, but they know, with a terrifying certainty, that some places are not meant to be disturbed, and some whispers are not just the wind. And sometimes, when you seek solitude in nature, you might find that you're not as alone as you think, and the wilderness holds secrets far darker than any campfire story. Story 2. The Uninvited Guest. This next unsettling account comes from a group of 4 college friends, Liam, Chloe, Ben, and Maya, who decided to celebrate their graduation with a week-long camping trip to a popular national park, known for its stunning vistas and well-maintained trails. This was in the summer of 2019. They were excited for a week of hiking, swimming, and evenings spent around a roaring campfire, sharing stories and making memories. They had reserved a secluded campsite, nestled deep within a less trafficked section of the park, hoping for a balance of accessibility and privacy. Their first few days were idyllic. The weather was perfect, the scenery breathtaking, and the camaraderie among them was strong. They hiked to waterfalls, swam in crystal-clear lakes, and cooked delicious meals over their portable stove. Evenings were spent laughing, playing cards, and stargazing. They felt completely at ease, surrounded by the beauty of nature, far from the stresses of academic life. The first sign that something was amiss occurred on their 3rd night. They had just finished dinner and were gathered around the campfire when they heard a faint rustling in the bushes just beyond the perimeter of their campsite. They paused their conversation, listening. The rustling continued, slow and deliberate, as if something large was moving through the undergrowth. Liam, the most adventurous of the group, grabbed a flashlight and shone it into the darkness. He saw nothing. They dismissed it as a deer or a bear, common occurrences in the park. But the rustling returned the next night and the night after that. Always around the same time, always from the same direction. And each time it seemed to get a little closer, a little more insistent. They started to feel a subtle shift in the atmosphere of their campsite. The easy camaraderie began to fray, replaced by a low hum of anxiety. They found themselves constantly scanning the tree line, listening for sounds, their conversations becoming more hushed, their laughter less frequent. Then small things started to go missing. A bag of marshmallows, a pair of sunglasses, a small pocket knife. They initially blamed each other, accusing one another of misplacing items, but the disappearances continued and the tension between them grew. One morning they woke to find their cooler, which they had meticulously secured, slightly ajar and a single muddy footprint on the lid. It was a human footprint, much larger than any of theirs, and it seemed to have only 4 toes. The discovery of the footprint sent a chill through the group. They knew they weren't alone. Someone or something was watching them, entering their campsite and taking their belongings. They reported it to a park ranger, who assured them it was likely just another camper playing a prank, or perhaps a curious bear. But the ranger's casual dismissal did little to alleviate their growing unease. The climax of their ordeal occurred on their final night. They had decided to pack up early the next morning and leave, their idyllic camping trip having turned into a psychological ordeal. They were sitting around a small, dying campfire, too nervous to sleep when they heard it. A low, guttural growl coming from the bushes directly behind their tent. It was too deep for a bear, too human-like for any other animal. It was a sound that spoke of ancient, primal rage. They froze, their eyes wide with terror. The growl was followed by a series of heavy thuds, like something large was repeatedly hitting the side of their tent. Then a tearing sound and a long, drawn-out shriek from inside the tent. They knew Ben, who had been feeling unwell, had gone to bed early. Liam, grabbing a heavy branch, cautiously approached the tent. He shone his flashlight inside. The tent was ripped open, and Ben was gone. Only his sleeping bag remained, shredded and stained with a dark, viscous liquid that smelled faintly of iron. Panic erupted. They screamed, calling Ben's name, but there was no response. The rustling in the bushes intensified, moving away from their campsite, deeper into the woods. They heard a faint, desperate cry, then silence. They didn't wait. They scrambled into their car, leaving everything behind, their gear, their supplies, their sense of security. They drove straight out of the park, not stopping until they reached the nearest police station, their story a frantic, incoherent jumble of growls, footprints, and a missing friend. The police launched a massive search operation, but Ben was never found. The park rangers found their campsite in disarray, the tent ripped and the strange 4-toed footprint clearly visible in the mud. They also found a single, crudely carved wooden effigy hanging from a tree branch just outside the perimeter of the campsite. It depicted a distorted human figure, its eyes wide with terror, its mouth open in a silent scream. The police dismissed it as a sick prank, but Liam, Chloe, and Maya knew better. They never camped again. They still have nightmares about the growl, about the 4-toed footprint, and about the chilling silence that followed Ben's disappearance. They never found out who or what the uninvited guest was. But they know, with a terrifying certainty, that some places in the wilderness hold secrets far older and darker than any human understanding. And sometimes, when you venture into the wild, you might find that you're not just sharing the space with animals, but with something far more ancient, far more malevolent, and far more hungry. Story 3. The Lake's Dark Reflection. Our final chilling account comes from a solo camper named Michael, an avid outdoorsman and photographer who sought out remote, untouched locations to capture the raw beauty of nature. This incident occurred during a week-long solo trip to a secluded, unnamed lake deep within a vast, untouched forest in northern Canada in the summer of 2022. Michael was an experienced survivalist, comfortable in his own company, and relished the challenge of living off the grid for extended periods. He chose this particular lake because it was rumored to be pristine, rarely visited, and offered unparalleled opportunities for wildlife photography. Michael spent his first few days in blissful solitude. He set up a minimalist camp by the lake's edge, fished for his meals, and spent hours hiking through the dense forest, capturing breathtaking images of the untouched wilderness. The lake itself was a mirror, reflecting the towering pines and the vast blue sky with perfect clarity. The only sounds were the gentle lapping of water against the shore, the chirping of birds, and the occasional splash of a fish breaking the surface. He felt a profound sense of peace, a deep connection to the ancient rhythms of the wild. Then things began to change. It started subtly, with a feeling of being watched. Michael would be hiking, and a sudden, inexplicable chill would run down his spine, a prickling sensation on the back of his neck. He would spin around, camera ready, but there would be nothing there. Just the silent, watchful trees. He dismissed it as an overactive imagination, a natural response to the isolation, but the feeling persisted, growing more intense with each passing day. He started to notice strange reflections in the lake. At first, he thought it was just the light playing tricks, or perhaps a ripple on the surface, but then he saw it clearly. A dark, distorted figure moving just beneath the surface of the water, mirroring his movements on the shore. It was humanoid in shape, but elongated, its limbs too long, its head too small, its movements fluid and unnatural. It seemed to be following him, always just out of sight, always just beneath the surface. Michael tried to rationalize it. A large fish, a trick of the light, a hallucination brought on by solitude. But the figure was too consistent, too deliberate in its movements. He started to avoid the lake, spending his days deeper in the forest, but the feeling of being watched remained. He would catch glimpses of movement in his peripheral vision, shadows that seemed to detach themselves from the trees, only to vanish when he turned to look directly at them. The climax of his ordeal occurred on his final night. He had decided to leave early the next morning, his peaceful retreat having turned into a psychological torment. He was sitting by his campfire, trying to calm his nerves, when he heard a faint splashing sound coming from the lake. He grabbed his flashlight and shone it toward the water. The dark figure was there, closer than ever before, its distorted reflection clearly visible on the surface. It was, slowly rising from the depths, its elongated limbs breaking the surface, its head emerging from the water. Michael's breath hitched in his throat. The figure was not a reflection. It was real. It was a creature of the lake, its skin slick and dark, its eyes two glowing embers in the dim light. It had no discernible mouth, but a low, guttural hum emanated from it, a sound that seemed to vibrate through Michael's very bones. It began to move toward him, slowly, deliberately, its webbed hands reaching out. Michael scrambled to his feet, grabbing his pack. He didn't stop to pack his tent or his remaining gear. He just ran, blindly, into the dense forest, the hum of the creature echoing behind him. He ran until his lungs burned, until his legs ached, until he could no longer hear the hum. He ran until he collapsed, exhausted and terrified, miles from his camp. He eventually found his way back to civilization, disoriented and traumatized. He reported his experience to the local authorities, but they dismissed it as a hallucination, a result of prolonged solitude and stress. They found his abandoned camp by the lake, his tent still standing, his gear untouched. But they found no evidence of any creature, no strange footprints, no disturbed vegetation. Michael never returned to the wilderness. He still has nightmares about the dark reflection, about the hum, and about the creature's glowing eyes. He never found out what it was, or why it had chosen to reveal itself to him, but he knows, with a terrifying certainty, that some lakes hold secrets far older and darker than any human understanding. And sometimes, when you seek beauty in untouched nature, you might find that you're not just sharing the space with animals, but with something far more ancient, far more malevolent, and far more territorial. Conclusion. These three accounts, drawn from the chilling realities of camping trips gone wrong, serve as a stark reminder that even in the most pristine and seemingly peaceful natural environments, danger can lurk in the most unexpected forms. Each story, unique in its manifestation, shares a common thread: the profound vulnerability of venturing into the wild, where the familiar comforts of civilization are stripped away and where the line between the known and the unknown blurs. Sarah and Mark learned that the solitude they craved in the Pacific Northwest wilderness came with an unseen, unsettling presence. Their encounter with the whispers in the woods shattered their sense of security, leaving them with a lingering paranoia that no amount of distance from the forest could erase. They discovered that some places are not meant to be disturbed, and some whispers are not just the wind, but a chilling invitation to a nightmare. Liam, Chloe, Ben, and Maya, the college friends celebrating their graduation, found that their idyllic national park getaway was invaded by an uninvited guest. Their experience with the four-toed footprint and the disappearance of their friend Ben left them with a haunting understanding that some places in the wilderness hold secrets far older and darker than any human comprehension. They learned that when you venture into the wild, you might not just be sharing the space with animals, but with something far more ancient, malevolent, and hungry. And Michael, the solo photographer, discovered that the serene beauty of a secluded Canadian lake held a terrifying secret beneath its surface. His encounter with the lake's dark reflection shattered his perception of reality, leaving him with a chilling certainty that some lakes hold secrets far older and darker than any human understanding. He learned that when you seek beauty in untouched nature, you might find that you're not just sharing the space with animals, but with something far more ancient, territorial, and deadly. These narratives are not mere fiction. They are echoes of real incidents, whispers from the untamed corners of our world. They remind us that the trust we place in the beauty and tranquility of nature, in the assumption that the wilderness is a place of escape and rejuvenation, can be profoundly misplaced. The camping trip horror stories serve as a powerful cautionary tale, urging us to remain vigilant, to trust our instincts, and to remember that when you step into the wild, you might not be alone, and the secrets you uncover might just be your last. The chilling reality of camping trip horror stories lies in their ability to exploit our primal fears. When we are in the wilderness, we are inherently vulnerable. We are exposed to the elements, far from immediate help, and often reliant on our own wits and resources. This vulnerability is amplified when the threat is not a natural predator or a sudden storm, but something unseen, something that defies explanation, something that seems to deliberately target us. The isolation of the wilderness, which is often sought for its peace and quiet, can quickly become a terrifying prison when you realize you are not alone, and the unseen entity is playing a game with you. These stories also highlight the limitations of our understanding of the natural world. We tend to categorize and explain everything, but some phenomena, some entities, simply do not fit into our neat little boxes. The whispers, the four-toed footprints, the dark reflections, these are not easily dismissed as animal behavior or natural occurrences. They hint at something else, something ancient and malevolent that has existed in these wild places long before humans ever set foot there. The terror comes from the realization that we are not at the top of the food chain, that there are forces at play that we cannot comprehend, let alone control. Furthermore, the psychological impact of these experiences is profound and long-lasting. The victims are not just physically unharmed in most cases, but their sense of reality is shattered. Their trust in nature, in solitude, in their own judgment, is irrevocably broken. They carry the weight of their encounters with them, a constant reminder that the world is far stranger and more dangerous than they ever imagined. The nightmares, the paranoia, the inability to ever truly relax in a natural setting again, these are the true scars of a camping trip gone horribly wrong. These narratives, while disturbing, serve a purpose beyond mere entertainment. They are cautionary tales, echoing the primal fears of intrusion, isolation, and the unknown. They remind us that the most terrifying monsters often exist in the unseen corners of our minds, or in the ancient, untamed places of the world. The camper, seeking solace and adventure, becomes a proxy for the audience, experiencing the gradual erosion of safety and the terrifying realization that some secrets are best left buried. The psychological impact is profound, leaving the victims forever altered, their sense of security irrevocably shattered. The stories are not just about what happened, but about the lingering dread, the constant vigilance, and the chilling knowledge that the peace of the wilderness can, in an instant, become a stage for terror. Ultimately, these stories are a testament to the fact that horror doesn't always need a supernatural explanation. Sometimes, the most terrifying things are the ones that could happen to anyone, at any time, in any seemingly safe place. The camper, stepping into the heart of nature, inadvertently steps into its nightmares. And the chilling truth is, once you've seen what lurks beneath the surface of natural tranquility, you can never truly feel safe again. The echoes of these real incidents serve as a stark warning. When you venture into the wild, you're not just enjoying nature, you're potentially opening yourself up to a reality far more disturbing than any fiction. So, the next time you pack your bags for a camping trip, remember these tales. Remember Sarah and Mark, Liam and his friends, and Michael. Remember that behind every rustling leaf, every distant sound, every shimmering reflection, there might be a story waiting to unfold, a story that will change you forever. Because in the quiet, empty spaces of the wilderness, the line between adventurer and victim can become terrifyingly thin, and the horrors that unfold are often the ones you never saw coming. The call of the wild is often irresistible, but sometimes that call is not an invitation, but a warning. And for those who ignore it, the wilderness has a way of revealing its true, terrifying nature. A nature that is far more ancient, far more powerful, and far more terrifying than any human can comprehend. Comprehend, 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 truly comprehend, 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 comprehend. And for those who dare to venture into its depths, the wilderness often reveals its true, terrifying nature, a nature that is far more ancient, far more powerful, and far more terrifying than any human can truly comprehend. The silence of the forest can be deceptive, masking the unseen movements of entities that have roamed these lands for centuries, their presence a chilling reminder of our fleeting existence in the grand scheme of things. The beauty of nature can quickly turn into a facade, revealing a sinister undercurrent that preys on the unsuspecting, drawing them deeper into a web of fear and despair. The stories of those who have encountered these horrors serve as a stark warning, a testament to the fact that some places are best left undisturbed, their secrets buried deep within the earth, lest they awaken and claim new victims. The call of the wild is often irresistible, but sometimes that call is not an invitation, but a warning, a desperate plea to turn back before it's too late. For once you've stepped into the heart of true wilderness horror, you can never truly escape its grasp, its chilling tendrils reaching out to haunt your dreams and forever alter your perception of the world. The echoes of these real incidents serve as a stark warning. When you venture into the wild, you're not just enjoying nature. You're potentially opening yourself up to a reality far more disturbing than any fiction. A reality where the line between the natural and the supernatural blurs, and where the most terrifying monsters are not always the ones with teeth and claws, but the ones that reside in the shadows, waiting patiently for their next victim.